You ever stand in Spaceport and feel it? Not the need for loot. Not the panic that sets in if you think you hear footsteps. I mean the shame that's baked into the concrete. Because when we think about it, this place wasn't built for raiders. It was built for departure. Gateway to the stars for the people who got seats, and a bitter reminder for everyone who didn't. And here's the part that keeps me up. If some people made it off-world, then somebody decided who'd mattered enough to save it. So today, we're going beyond Dark Raiders. We're digging into the pre-Exodus factions, the ones the game only hints at, but whose fingerprints are everywhere. And stick with me, because near the end, I'm going to lay out one theory that changes the Exodus from a last hope into something way darker. What's up, Raiders? It's XB. And if you love story hiding in plain sight, consider hitting like and subscribe, because we do this kind of deep dive and theory crafting a lot. So this is confirmed. Earth gets hit by a global environmental collapse. Survivors rebuild in fragments, and then machines start falling from the sky. A first wave is held back for a time in the Rust Belt, but Ark comes back harder, forcing survivors underground into Speranza, where life becomes a fight over limited resources, and the only way to live is to risk topside. And this is the theory of what we're diving into today. The game doesn't give us a neat list of pre-Exodus factions, so we're reconstructing them the way Raiders would, through motive, geography, and the kind of systems that must exist for an Exodus to happen. And if you want to go full detective mode with me, hang out, play games. I do live lore hunts on Twitch, funny challenges, and just a place where we all hang out and be normal gamers, no egos. So let's pause on the details, compare clues, and let's have little arguments with the chat in real time. Head on over to our Twitch and drop a follow, and come say hi. But let's get on with the video. If the Exodus was real, if shuttles launched, if someone got out, then the first faction wasn't a militia or a cult. When we think about it, it was paperwork, contracts, access lists, security clearances. Because no civilization collapses and then suddenly builds a space escape plan out of fear. I want you to picture a group I call the Ledger Lords. Not a single corporation, more like a coalition of wealth and logistics. The people who owned the last clean water, the last fuel, the last functioning manufacturing hubs, the last private sector. They didn't need to win wars. They just needed to control the bottlenecks. And the spaceport, well, that's the altar. The official map description straight up calls it a gateway to the stars for those who boarded the shuttles. So the question becomes, if there were seats, who decided who got them? And here's the theory. The Ledger Lords didn't sell salvation. They sold a membership. And that membership isn't hope. It was a price tag. And be honest, if you had a family and you had one seat, do you pay whatever they ask, or do you burn the list and take your chances? Because that's what factions are, right? Not just uniforms. It's the moment someone decides, my people first. If you're already forming a theory in your head, drop it in the comments. So while the Ledger Lords were counting seats, somebody else was counting bodies. The official lore mentions the first wave of Ark being held back in the Rust Belt. after a decade of hard fighting. That means they were organised defenders. Not perfect, not rich, but stubborn. So here's our second faction, the Rust Belt Compact. Think of them like a patchwork alliance, town militias, probably full of engineers, scav crews, maybe old industrial unions that still knew how to keep machines alive or kill them. They weren't fighting for escape, they were fighting for the ground they walked on. And that changes everything. Because once you've held the line against the Ark, even once, you become dangerous to the Ledger Lords. But why? Well, because you prove the surface isn't lost. And if the surface isn't lost, then the Exodus isn't truly necessary. It becomes optional. And if it's optional, well, that leads to monetization. This is the moment I think the factions split for good. One side wanted to leave, the other side wanted to rebuild, and both sides think the other is going to get everybody killed. So what do you think happened first? The Compact got betrayed, or they refused to protect the spaceport? And now we zoom in underground. Because once Ark returns with a vengeance, survivors are forced into the makeshift community of Speranza. And this is where the third faction forms, not in a boardroom, not on a battlefield, but in deep dark tunnels filled with ration lines, and arguments over who gets to breathe clean air today. The official law frames Speranza as a resistance hub, and even gives us Celeste's role in that way. She survives early hardship, gets taken in by raiders, and becomes part of what helped shape and found Speranza. So when I say the Speranza founders, I'm not talking about saints. I'm talking about people who had to turn survival into a working, living system. When you look at it, who gets the medicine? Who gets the tools? Who has the chance to go topside? And, mainly, who gets protected? And who gets used? And this is where raiders are born as a class. The official page even calls out that raiders have privileges like the Raider Den, because topside survival requires skill, mechanics, craftsmen, and chemistry. So the founders aren't heroic because they're pure, they're heroic because they built something ugly that worked. Rules, trade, consequences. Because without that, Speranza becomes a tomb. And if you're like me, if you've ever thought why do raiders have it better, this is why. And if you want, I'll do a whole video on the underground politics side of Speranza. It's a difficult one, because it's theory. It's trying to read between the lines of what the game tells us, how we play, how we feel. So let me know. Because once you accept the world was twice destroyed, you start seeing a pattern in human behaviour. When people can't control the future, they invent meaning. So imagine a faction that formed before the Exodus really solidified. A group that believed Ark wasn't random, it was rhythmic. Waves, roots, habits. And I've came up with the name the Signal Choir. Engineers, radio obsessives, pattern hunters, the kind of people who don't see a ruined antenna as scrap. They see a mouth that used to speak and talk to the people. And they had one dangerous idea. If Ark can be read, the Ark can be answered. Not with bullets, but with signals. And this ties into something official that I love. Raiders are told that topside success might be the key to uncovering hidden truths. Hidden truths doesn't just mean loot. It means somebody, somewhere, wants answers. So here's the twist. What if pre-Exodus wasn't just factions fighting over escape? What if there was a faction trying to make contact? And what if that is why some facilities feel like they were sealed in a hurry? Like the moment they learned something, they panicked. And answer this. If you discover proof that Ark responds to certain frequencies, would you share it? Or would you bury it? Because humanity can't be trusted with that kind of power. So let's go into the theory that I promised. The Exodus gets talked about like an escape. The Codex-style summaries frame it like a handful of survivors managed to get into outer space, and that the tech that remains is incredibly prized. But that wording matters. A handful. Not everyone who could. Not a coordinated rescue. Just a simple handful. So what if the Exodus wasn't the end of civilization? What if it was the moment civilization showed its true face? What if the Ledger Lords didn't run? They selected. And selection is basically a filter. Filtering out useful people to pass through, and the rest get left behind. And whilst we zoom out and look at the Ark itself, they're relentless, efficient, patrolling with no end, denying the surface and forcing survivors into scarcity. What if the Ark isn't just a threat? What if the Ark is the same logic as the Exodus, turned into machines? A system designed to control who gets to exist on the surface, who gets resources, who gets a future. And if that's true, then the scariest part of Ark Raiders isn't the robots. It's the idea that humanity built systems like this long before the robots ever fell. So here's my question to you. Which pre-Exodus faction do you think mattered most? The Ledger Lords, the ones who controlled escape. The Rust Belt Compact, the ones who proved the surface could be held. Or the Speranza founders, the ones who turned survival into order. And lastly, the Signal Choir, the ones chasing the hidden truth behind the Ark. Drop your pick in the comments with one reason, even if it's short. And seriously, if you want to go deeper on this life, come through to our channel on Twitch. It's the same as the YouTube tag. We'll pull up the maps, freeze frame details. You can argue your theory in real time. And we play many other games and funny little challenges with our community that we have built over this short time. I'd love to see you guys over there. I get to thank the people that support me on these videos. So if you did like this and you do want to support, consider hitting like and subscribe if you want more Ark Raiders lore and theory and many other games that we'll cover in the future. But as always, take it easy.